I think the American people recognize that we must keep government open, that a shutdown is not worth anything, and that you should not have a Trump shutdown. You have the White House,
did you say
Trump
Trump?
shutdown.
Oh.
You have the White House,
gonna go on.
you have the Senate, you have the House of Representatives, you have the votes. You should pass it
No, we don't
right
have the
now.
votes, Nancy, because in the Senate, we need 60 votes.
No, but in the House,
and we don't
you
have.
could bring it up right now.
Yeah, but I
today.
can't, excuse me, but I can't get it passed in the House if it's not going to pass in the Senate. I don't want to waste time.
Well, the fact is, you can get it started that way.
It doesn't help for me to take a vote in the House where I will win easily with the Republicans.
not win.
It doesn't help to take that vote because I'm not going to get the vote
Don't put
of
it
the
on
Senate. I
Senate,
need
Mr.
10
President.
senators. That's
Mr.
the problem.
President, you have the White House, you have the Senate.
I have the
you
White
have
House. The White
of
House is done,
Representatives.
and the House would give me the vote if I wanted it, but I can't because
you
I need,
can't-
Nancy, I
you
need 10
can't.
votes from Chuck.
Now,
All right, let me
Mr.
say
President,
something here.
Let me just say one thing. The fact is, you do not have the votes in the House.
Nancy, I do.
We're coming in good faith to negotiate with you about how we can keep the government
Open.
We're going to keep it open if we have border security. If we don't have border security, Chuck,
I'm with you.
we're not going to keep it
I'm
open.
with you. We are going to have border security.
And it's the same board, you're bragging about what has been done.
By us.
We want to do the same thing we did last year, this year. That's our proposal. If it's good then, it's good now, and it won't shut down the government.
Chuck, we can build a
But that's
much
it.
bigger
Let's-
section
let's
with
debate-
more money.
let's debate in
Okay,
private.
you know what I'll say? Yes. If we don't get what we want, one way or the other, whether it's through you, through a military, through anything you want to call, I will shut down the government.
Okay, fair
Absolutely.
enough.
And
We
I am
disagree.
proud, and I'll
We
tell you what.
disagree.
1,000 years from now, when generations of what will then pass for human beings decide to look back on one of the more tumultuous periods here on Earth, they will use a mere portion of what will then hopefully be much more massive brains, using a lot more human electricity than we do now. They will be seeking some form of wisdom, finding a simple answer to just one very simple question. What were those primitives actually thinking? If indeed they were doing anything coming within the range of actual intelligent thought, in that now long extinct corner of the planet known as the United States, which obviously, as history will then teach them, was anything but. Why were these bipeds wasting their limited time, energy, and space on this resolute nonsense called politics, and what was then colloquially described as this thing called a train wreck? That's my opening to come clean about a recent social media discourse which proved several things. A, people only read and hear what they want to read and hear and forget everything providing in context. B, people so deep into their politics will never ever think twice about crossing the figurative railroad tracks to try and understand what someone else is saying or writing for fear of considering another line of thinking that might, just might, be something they have never considered and could change their absolute concrete opinion. And C, it's just not quite the holidays until you've purchased the baked container of arugula and you have that in the house, which of course has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but when you think about it, seeking to make sense of anything Donald Trump is involved in these days should be driving us all to binge heavily on anything that will take our minds off. I had become involved in a Facebook conversation on a good friend's post, and I noted the current state of the Democratic Party led by Nancy Pelosi. A point to make here. I am neither left nor right, but have for a long time been an independent centrist, which means, in essence, I quite often find both sides deplorable, insulting, catatonic, and often delusional. Certainly more delusional than those who still don't believe Dr. Stephen Strange saw precisely what would happen after Thanos snapped his fingers, and thus played out the Avengers battle with him exactly as it needed to happen in order eventually to, of course, win the battle and save the universe.
Went forward in time to view alternate futures, to see all the possible outcomes of the coming conflict.
How many did you see?
14,605,000.
How many did we win?
One.
But I digress. Back to point of order. In my conversational response on this post, I compared the Democratic Party led by Pelosi to the aforementioned train wreck, for which within seconds I was branded a misogynist because, and I can only guess where this was coming from, because as a man, I dared to call out a woman and question her leadership. There was nothing there about how we got to where we are today. It was all because a man questioned a woman, despite the fact recent history proves my comment to be well within the scope of reason and actual fact. All you have to do is look at what is there. Even some within the Democratic Party were calling for Pelosi's removal as Speaker of the House, seeking younger and fresher ideas. And the Democratic Party, let's be honest, has been floundering about like the proverbial oxygen-starved sea creature for the last couple of years, practically rudderless when it comes to taking on the president and his cadre of really bad grifters, all of whom wear some really nice suits, some of whom are now looking snappy and nattily attired in their very best orange. Democrats have allowed themselves to be rolled over and humiliated since Trump's ascendancy to power. And at the grassroots level of many Democrats I've spoken to in the last year or so, every single one, everyone, has expressed a despondency about no real leadership. No balls, no stones in going up against the ruling class. Along come the midterm elections. And despite what Donald Trump claims, come on, Republicans were the ones being rolled over in a huge loss for this president and his soldiers. Democrats were able to grow more than a few pairs, thanks in large part not necessarily because of policy or ideas, but because in many areas of the country where Democrats were winners, Trump and his lemmings screwed the pooch so badly to the point where they had become... Okay, now that we've torched any chance for a sponsorship from Amtrak, we might as well just blow the throttle and go wide full open. Here we go. My comment on that post, as any rational person would understand, had absolutely nothing to do with gender. It had to do with having the guts to stand firm and grow a spine. To the credit of Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, they both did just that after a few days of my making that social media comment. A comment which, in case you're wondering, I still stand behind even in light of the rock-solid in-your-face to Donald Trump. I said it, I'm sticking with it. As for their comments to the president, I will, with no evidence whatsoever, take full credit for causing what Pelosi and Schumer said. Hey, why not? The president no doubt wasted no time finding someone to blame for organizing what one excellent source of mine in Washington, D.C. termed, quote, the slap-to-the-face shit show, unquote, that will live in infamy to be used many times over by Democrats now realizing their dump Pelosi mini-rebellion was never going to work. Save for the fact it did have something of a ripple effect. I'll wager Pelosi was smart enough to see the rising tide and was so pleased the president gave her a global platform to both shut down the party opposition to her and flip the figurative finger of fate to the president, giving her the very public victory she needed at just that precise moment. Hey, look, she's no political fool when a moment presents itself. You take advantage. Here's the most interesting point. In wake of that meeting, a number of my Republican friends, and I'm not just talking the occasional voter here. I'm talking hardcore, dyed-in-the-wool, spit in the eye of a Democrat at 40 paces Republicans, have so quietly hinted at their admiration for what Pelosi and Schumer did that day. Because these are people who have watched as their efforts were tossed in the figurative dumpster fire by the Tea Party, then forced to watch their once respectable grand old party morph into the toxic waste heap it has now become. A number of these people would rather lose teeth than even casually agree with a Democrat, which then must be why so many of them have emergency dental visits on their schedule coming up. About 3 or 4 dozen of them all roaming about the nation's capital in one form or another right now, all more than just a little paranoid. All right? What Pelosi and Schumer did in full view of the world is what dedicated Republicans, many of them, not all of them, many of them, have been quietly waiting for within their own ranks. Someone to grow a pair. Stop dancing around presidential lies and criminality, both alleged and on full display. Hey, it's not as if we haven't seen this song and dance before.
I have never obstructed justice. And I think, too, that I can say that in my years of public life, that I welcome this kind of examination, because people have got to know whether or not their president is a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
He was a crook. Without question, uncovered when the issue wasn't gender, sexism, racism, or even policy. It was about breaking the law. And some people need to understand that when you stand close to that person on the tracks, you're going to be rail pizza, just like them. I'm Ed Berliner. Rock on, true believers. That's the hard line.